Hey guys, this is EcksToo. Hello and welcome to another video, and today we will be talking about what is currently my favorite loadout in Star Wars Squadrons. With that being said, before we begin, let me know down in the comments, which starfighter is your favorite and which loadout do you use? Is there a specific hull or weapon or equipment piece that you find vital to your success? I really look forward to reading your answers. So, today we'll be talking about a very high risk, high reward loadout for the Interceptor class, and this is what I used for a lot of the Star Wars Squadrons tournament, and the footage that I'm playing right now actually comes from a game last night where I went 41-5 using this exact loadout. Now there's a few caveats to that. First of all, we actually lost the game because I wasn't contributing a lot on offense. We didn't go in with a team of 5, it was 4-on-4 plus an extra on each team, and it's possible that ranking's still broken. We don't really know what's going on. With that being said, let's explain how this loadout works and why I think it's the deadliest in Star Wars Squadrons. So I'm calling this the Interceptor Stealth Loadout because it relies really heavily on not being seen and shaking targeting locks. I adapted this loadout after it was used against me to great effect, and I've since found it to be a very highly survivable loadout if you've got the skill to pull it off. So let's take a look. First of all, there are really two fundamental elements to this loadout. The first is the Carbonti Reflex Hull, or the equivalent for the TIE Interceptor. Basically, this increases a starfighter's passive stealth range to 1500 meters, so an enemy can't lock onto you if you are outside 1500 meters. That itself is really helpful for planning and executing attack runs, especially if the enemy is distracted with something else and you've got a really fast interceptor. The downside of the Carbonti is that it decreases your hull by 30%. This is obviously very significant with the Interceptor. Less so on the A-Wing because you still do have the shield, which is not decreased, but if you're running this kit, you don't want to be shot, period. The associated second key element is the Carbonti Targeting Jammer. This is, in my opinion, the most useful equipment in the entire game. Per the description, the Targeting Jammer temporarily hides you from enemy radar and you can get closer to AI ships without being attacked. However, what that practically means is not only are you hidden from radar, but you cannot be targeted, period. And this is the case if somebody already has you. They can be locked on and shooting you, and if you execute that, you're just gone. They can't follow you, they have to rely completely on visual tracking, which is very difficult if you're fighting an interceptor just because of how fast they are. This is useful in just so many situations, which we'll discuss throughout this video, in which I'm hopefully showing you guys on screen. I think we go this entire footage right now without a single death from me, which is really the great aspect of these Carbonti loadouts and their TIE Interceptor equivalent, which by the way have the exact same symbols, so you should be able to find them really easily. You can run, hit that targeting jammer, and unless the enemy gets very lucky, you are not getting hit. You can dive behind an asteroid, hit the targeting jammer, then put full power to shields and get your shields back up, or heal, or whatever else you need to do. Back to strategies though in a few minutes. Let's talk about the other aspects of the loadout. First of all, I personally keep the standard weapons for the Interceptor. That, however, is just a personal preference. I like to be capable at short, middle, and long range. However, I think you could also make a really good argument for the rapid fire cannon with its higher DPS but shorter range. I think this would be especially good on defense to counter bombing rushes, and this is the good thing about the kit. You can usually make a couple of adjustments and just slot it into a different loadout without fundamentally changing your gameplay style. And similarly, if you're attacking capital ships, the Carbonti Reflex Hull is probably not going to be very useful because you'll be in the scrum. Instead, you might want just a regular hull or even something else. When it comes to my left equipment, I like to use the repair kit. The entire purpose of this loadout is to be extremely deadly, get out and survive, and I just find that the repair kit helps with this immensely. An A-Wing or an Interceptor with a reflex hull is quite weak, and you just need a few bits of incidental damage to destroy you. I mean, the entire repair kit will basically heal the craft under any situation, except with extreme amounts of damage, maybe with 80% or more. So personally, unless I'm wanting to run back to the flagship frequently, or if I've got a really active support player, which I often do in Charlie, the repair kit I find to be essential. I do know that Alex ran a target jammer loadout during Operation Ace, but instead of the repair kit, he had missiles, or I think unguided rockets, which is also a very interesting loadout. It's even more aggressive than the one I've got here, but I can certainly see that working in many situations. That just comes down to personal preference. The real key element of the kit is stealth, so do whatever else you need to get your kill death assist ratio as high as you can. On another note, if you do go with the left equipment as heal, you are relying solely on your lasers. That is particularly weak in the A-Wing, which can sometimes run out of juice. The Interceptor has a bit of a get out of jail free card with the power shunting ability, but that's just something to pay attention to, and you also have to think about how that affects your ability to take on capital ships. Obviously, if you have no missiles, you'll have to go even further into an anti-starfighter role. You're not going to be very useful for much more than a basic run against even a frigate. For engines, I kept stock on this because maneuverability and speed are both extraordinarily important, and for shields, I also went with the standard incom deflector for the A-Wing and the equivalent on the TIE Interceptor, but I can also see the Fabritech Scrambler shield being very useful because it's sort of one further obstacle to the enemy locking on, and that's really useful. What I think you don't want to use is something like the overloaded deflector shield, just because you'll frequently be taking chip damage in this loadout, and there will be lots of cases where you survive with just a little bit of health or your shield's completely drained, so it doesn't make sense to not be able to regenerate to full power. With that being said, that's the loadout. Let's talk about how to play this class. And I mentioned a few times, this is very high risk, very high reward, and I think this is one of the most skill-based interceptor classes that you can make. The principle of this loadout is a sort of run and gun tactics. You're getting in and attacking your enemy before they can spot you, or if necessary, when stealth, then you're leaving and sort of doing that again and again and again. Because you're not very survivable, you can't afford to take a lot of damage, so you've got to be selective about which targets you're facing. That means you don't want to attack an enemy if they've got another enemy behind them, and you want to figure out escape vectors. Get as many one-on-one combat situations as you can. So one strategy is to cloak before combat. My favorite opening with this loadout is to go somewhere near the middle of the map, behind some sort of structure or piece of debris, move my full power to weapons, stay completely stationary. When the enemy is about to cross the midway point of the map, I'll go fully stealth and I'll gun them down and retreat back to my line. This works very well and is frequently how I get the first kill on a lot of matches. But you can certainly stealth other than just at the opening of the game. I will frequently do so if I'm attacking from the front, not if I'm directly head on with the enemy, although we'll talk about that later, but if I'm slightly off to the side, I'll hit the stealth right before they get the chance to see me. I'll start unloading my lasers, and as I mentioned earlier, they won't be able to select me because this ability affects not only how you appear on an enemy's map, but their ability to actually target you. So essentially they're being fired on, and their only real sort of way out is to target you with their eyes and destroy you without any sort of targeting assistance, which is very, very difficult. Although you don't want to get in any head-to-head matches, like straight on fighting against another ship, the targeting jammer can still be really effective, even if they already have a beat on you. Hit the targeting jammer, move enough so that they'll lose you, and either attack from a different angle or use your speed to pull away, loop around, and try to get behind them. On that note, the targeting jammer is also useful if you get stuck in one of those circle of death situations where you and an enemy are basically spiraling around each other. One thing I'll do is hit the targeting jammer, then stop completely, pull off in a weird direction, then kind of come around on my enemy. Usually he or she will be confused about where I am, and that's a much easier kill, or at least I'll get them to run away. Otherwise, if I need to flee, and this works in any situation, just start running, hit the targeting jammer, and it will be much more difficult for a pursuing ship. Just make sure you put full power to engines, of course. If you combine the stealth with the heal, you can get away from a lot of encounters that you otherwise wouldn't be able to, and it's sort of a crutch in that sense. And when I play other loadouts, I definitely miss the ability to hide myself from an enemy scanner. There are other other situations where you'll want to use the targeting jammer as well. If you're approaching a capital ship, the targeting jammer makes it more difficult for the ship's weapons to hit you. If you're behind a really sturdy craft like a TIE bomber and you've got to slow down to really lay on the fire, frequently I will preemptively hit the targeting jammer in that case as well, just so nobody comes up behind me and finishes me off as I'm less mobile. And as a note, that works extremely well as the TIE Interceptor. So as the TIE Interceptor, you guys probably know, or really with any of the unshielded TIEs, instead of having a shield shift button, you can shunt power directly between systems, so you can take your engine energy and move it directly into your guns. That means that sometimes if you've shunted too much energy, you literally cannot move. Now, you're a sitting duck in that case, but the targeting jammer definitely helps you survive those situations when maybe you otherwise shouldn't. This loadout is very, very effective at the first stage of battle where there's a lot of confusion and where it's mostly pure dogfighting, but it also excels on defense. If the enemy is focused on attacking your capital ship or avoiding other nearby starfighters, then a targeting jammer use will probably be enough for the enemy to completely forget about you. You can use that, swoop up behind enemy starfighters, take them out, remain very, very mobile, very active, and that's how I got a lot of kills during this game. However, this build is weaker on offense. It's more usable when you're fighting frigates just because they're a lot less deadly and a lot less durable than the Star Destroyer or MC-75, but when you're fighting the final flagship, really all you can do is help protect your Y-Wings or your TIE bombers or whatever else, and I think it's probably more useful to switch craft. When I was using this during the tournament, I pretty much stayed in my Interceptor the entire time, but outside of providing a little cover, I wasn't really contributing to the attack, and what's more, because this loadout requires you to run and hide a lot, I couldn't even protect my ships very well. I was better off using something with a little more hull strength or shielding. So if you're playing with this stealth A-Wing and you want your team to win games, well, I really highly suggest you get a second loadout with more offensive capabilities, whether it's an interceptor with multi-lock missiles and a bit more strength, or a fighter, a bomber, whatever. Just be mobile and be willing to shift roles as your team needs it, especially in dire situations. I mean, if your bombers are doing work and you're getting lots of kills to keep morale high, you don't necessarily need to jump on bombing, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. This loadout is also quite useful for destroying support ships or anybody back farming starfighters. Now, it is unable to beat this sort of the AI creep tactic that's fairly meta, and if the frigates have fully moved up to the point where the AI are, you're kind of screwed. However, a cloaked ship has a lot more leniency when it comes to facing off against other ships in the danger zone than retreating back to safety. But guys, that's all I have for today. I've had a lot of success with this loadout. I think my kill-death ratio using it is probably around 3-0. I've had a couple of games with no deaths, including one where I went 20-0. However, during those experiences, I definitely found that I had to pull back very significantly in the final stages, and I just wasn't very useful, as I've mentioned. But guys, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this. Again, let me know your preferred ship and equipment down in the comments section. I look forward to reading all of your guys' thoughts. Until next time, though, be safe, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.